Hollywood taught us that medieval war was beautiful, shining armor, noble speeches, clean swords flashing in golden sunlight. But real medieval warfare wasn't heroic, it was claustrophobic. It smelled like iron and rot. It was mud swallowing men whole. It was arrows blotting out the sky. It was bones splintering beneath war horses. It was terror, and the slow realization that no one was coming to save you. For decades, cinema romanticized the Middle Ages, polishing rust into glory and turning slaughter into spectacle. But a handful of filmmakers refused to lie. They gave us mud instead of marble. 12. Excalibur, 1981. Steel screams against steel in sheets of blackened rain. John Berman's vision wasn't realism in the historical sense. It was psychological realism. Armor in Excalibur isn't practical. It's suffocating. Knights don't glide. They stagger under metal that feels welded to their skin. The battles are chaotic, compressed, and strangely intimate. Swords don't sparkle. They crunch into shields. Horses collapse. Men drown in their own armor in shallow water. Berman's cinematography uses thick mist, saturated greens, and metallic reflections that make the battlefield feel mythic but oppressive, like the weight of destiny itself. And that's the realism. Medieval war wasn't clean even in legend. It was muddy, brutal, and spiritually corrosive. Even fantasy can understand truth. 11. Arn, the Knight Templar, 2007. The Crusades were not sermons. They were logistics, discipline, and blood. This Scandinavian epic strips the Holy Land of romanticism. Armor looks heavy, because it was. Formations matter. Shield walls hold, until they don't. Director Peter Flint emphasizes tactical patience. Battles unfold slowly. Lines advance cautiously. Men brace for impact. There's a chilling realism in how cavalry is deployed, not as a glorious charge, but as a calculated hammer blow. The camera often pulls back, allowing us to see formations rather than individuals, reminding us that medieval warfare was collective survival. And when characters break psychologically, it's quiet. Faith fractures. Ideals bend. War reveals hypocrisy. It's not bombastic. It's disciplined. 10. Alexander Nevsky, 1938. Ice cracks beneath armored men as if history itself is splitting open. Sergei Eisenstein's Alexander Nevsky is often labeled propaganda. And yes, it was designed to inspire Soviet resistance. But strip away ideology, and what remains is one of the earliest truly physical depictions of medieval battle ever captured on film. The battle on the ice doesn't feel theatrical. It feels heavy. The Teutonic Knights do not charge like romantic crusaders. They advance like machinery, slow, suffocating, faceless beneath steel visors. Their armor isn't decorative, it is oppressive. You can almost hear the metal grinding as they move. Each step is deliberate. Each impact is blunt force. The Russian infantry respond not with individual heroics, but with formation discipline. Spears lower. Shields interlock. Lines bend but do not instantly break. Eisenstein understands spacing, understands that medieval combat was geometry before it was glory. Terrain dictates survival. And then there is the ice. When it fractures, there is no swelling music of sacrifice. No final speech. Just panic. Steel-clad bodies plunge into black water. The weight of armor, historically accurate in its fatal consequences, drags men down immediately. No swimming. No second chances. Just silence swallowing screams. Psychologically, the film works on a collective level. This is not the story of one man. It is the survival myth of a people forged in frost and iron. Even in 1938, long before gritty realism became fashionable, Eisenstein understood something fundamental. Armor is not heroic. Armor sinks. 9. Seven Samurai, 1954. Rain turns earth into glue. And glue turns warriors into prey. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai is not about swordsmanship. It is about exhaustion. It is about preparation. It is about the unbearable weight of waiting for violence to arrive. Before the first clash, we watch strategy unfold like a military blueprint. Trenches are dug. Barricades raised. Entry points narrowed. Kurosawa respects logistics, the quiet mathematics of survival. Spears dominate because historically, they dominated. They outrange swords. They hold lines. They kill efficiently. When the bandits finally attack, the rain begins, and it does not stop. Mud swallows sandals. Horses slip. Bodies crash into soaked earth. Combat becomes chaotic not because it is stylized, but because that is what happens when humans collide in confined, unstable terrain. The camera moves through the storm with breathless urgency, sometimes steady and observant, sometimes frantic and disoriented. We feel both the strategy and the collapse of strategy. Armor grows heavy with water. Limbs tremble. Fighters gasp for air between strikes. And when victory finally arrives, it does not feel triumphant. The survivors stand among graves, wind cutting through wet clothes. The farmers return to planting rice. The samurai stand apart, obsolete, displaced. Psychologically, Kurosawa devastates us. War does not elevate these men. It uses them. Victory protects nothing permanent. It simply delays loss. 8. Braveheart, 1995. Now we confront the contradiction. Braveheart is historically reckless. Painted faces from another era, kilts worn centuries too soon, timelines bent for drama. And yet, when steel meets bone, the film becomes disturbingly tactile. Mel Gibson stages battle not as elegant choreography, but as violent collision. At the Battle of Stirling, stripped of its strategically vital bridge, we still witness something brutally convincing: two masses of men sprinting toward each other with lethal intent. And then they hit. Bodies slam. Shields shatter. Horses crash headfirst into spear walls. The camera dives into the impact instead of observing from a safe distance. We see teeth break. Armor dent. Blood mist the air in chaotic arcs. The physicality feels right. Medieval warfare was not fencing, it was grappling, choking, crushing. But spectacle creeps in. Slow-motion hero shots. Swelling orchestral crescendos. Myth forged in cinematic fire. The film wants to inspire as much as it wants to horrify. So here is the paradox. Braveheart captures the mud and the brutality, but wraps them in legend. And that tension between realism and romanticism would shape medieval epics for decades to come. 7. Kingdom of Heaven, Director's Cut. The desert does not care about faith. Ridley Scott's director's cut restores what theatrical spectacle diluted: moral ambiguity and strategic realism. The Crusades are not painted as righteous destiny. They are political tensions stretched thin across blistering sand. Siege warfare becomes the central character. Catapults creak under strain. Engineers calculate trajectories. Walls are reinforced. Civilians carry stones and water. War here is mechanical and communal. It is not just knights charging, it is infrastructure under assault. Armor looks layered and restrictive, designed for protection but punishing in heat. Soldiers do not sprint endlessly, they trudge. Shields splinter under projectile fire. Arrows arc unpredictably. Fire spreads in chaotic patterns through crowded streets. The siege of Jerusalem unfolds as a grinding war of attrition. Every decision costs lives. Every breach invites massacre. Psychologically, characters are exhausted by ideology. Faith becomes a burden rather than comfort. Leaders negotiate not from righteousness, but from realism. This is not a holy war bathed in divine light. It is survival inside a furnace. 6. Henry V, 1989. Agincourt is not poetry. Kenneth Branagh strips Shakespeare of pageantry and drags him through wet soil. The famous battlefield becomes a suffocating bog where armor transforms from protection into prison. English archers stand ankle-deep in sludge, faces streaked with fear. The French advance heavily armored, confident, and then the mud claims them. Horses collapse mid-charge. Knights tumble into each other, unable to rise. The weight of plate armor, historically accurate in its restriction of mobility on unstable ground, becomes fatal. Men are crushed beneath comrades. Some drown face first in filth. The camera refuses distance. It stays close enough to hear ragged breathing inside helmets. We see Henry not as a glowing monarch, but as a young man barely containing terror. And the St. Crispin's Day speech? It is not delivered from a place of invincibility. It feels like a man convincing himself as much as his troops. For once, Shakespeare feels less like theater, and more like eyewitness testimony. 5. The Last Duel, 2021. Honor sounds noble, until you hear steel scraping inches from your face. Ridley Scott reconstructs judicial combat with almost forensic brutality. The duel is not elegant fencing. It is armored men colliding in a confined arena where every movement costs oxygen. Plate armor deflects blows realistically. Swords glance off metal with sparks instead of slicing effortlessly. Combatants grapple constantly because historically, armored combat often devolved into wrestling. Daggers seek gaps in joints. Hands strain for leverage. The camera traps us inside the helmets. Sound design amplifies breath echoing against steel. Vision narrows. Panic rises. Blood does not explode theatrically, it seeps. Psychologically, the duel represents more than personal rivalry. It is trauma weaponized. Pride, misogyny, institutional power, all condensed into a sanctioned death match. Medieval justice was spectacle, and spectacle was merciless. 4. Outlaw King, 2018. Rain lashes against Scottish steel like nature itself is choosing sides. David Mackenzie wastes no time romanticizing rebellion. The opening ambush is intimate and vicious, no music cushioning the violence, only breath, steel, and the dull thud of impact. The Battle of Loudon Hill becomes a tactical case study. Robert the Bruce chooses narrow, marshy ground intentionally. English cavalry, superior in open terrain, bog down almost immediately. This is historical realism rooted in geography. Spears rise in disciplined ranks. Horses crash violently, momentum betrayed by mud. Once mounted knights fall, their weight becomes liability. They struggle to stand beneath armor designed for dominance on stable ground. The camera trembles with the fighters. It does not soar heroically. It stumbles. Exhaustion seeps into every frame. Armor drags at shoulders. Morale fluctuates visibly. Victory feels earned through attrition, not destiny. It feels less like a movie set, and more like someone found lost footage from the 14th century. 3. The Northman, 2022. Revenge tastes like iron and smoke. Robert Eggers rejects the polished Viking fantasy aesthetic that dominated pop culture. Raids are swift, coordinated, and terrifyingly efficient. Shields interlock in tight formations. Axes rise and fall with bone-splitting finality. Long takes refuse to cut away from brutality. The camera moves with the raiders, not above them. Villages burn not as spectacle, but as consequence. Mud clings to boots. Snow freezes blood and hair. Firelight flickers across faces twisted by belief and rage. Psychologically, these warriors are not charming rogues. They are bound by fatalism, prophecy, and cultural codes that normalize violence. Honor and cruelty intertwine seamlessly. Violence feels spiritual, almost ritualistic. But never glamorous. It is animal. It is intimate. It is primal. 2. The King, 2019. Agincourt returns, stripped of legend and drained of color. David Micah's vision is suffocating. The battlefield is not expansive. It is claustrophobic. Mud grips at boots like hands pulling men down. Knights collapse under the sheer weight of armor. Once on the ground, they struggle to rise. Historically accurate depictions of plate's limitations in unstable terrain turn into scenes of horrifying realism. Combat devolves quickly into grappling. Faces are obscured by visors caked in dirt. Helmets restrict peripheral vision. Men fight blindly, stabbing at gaps. Timothy Chalamet's Henry does not radiate certainty. He looks isolated, burdened, almost fragile beneath the crown. Victory arrives, but it feels accidental, the byproduct of terrain and timing rather than divine favor. History here is not triumphant. It is claustrophobic. 1. Macbeth, 2015. The sky burns red before men do. Justin Kurzel opens Macbeth not with fanfare, but with smoke and silence. The battlefield feels post-apocalyptic, a landscape of ash and fading screams. Combat is swift and savage. There are no extended choreographed duels. Blades sink with dull inevitability. Shields splinter. Bodies fall quickly and stay down. Cinematography drenches the screen in blood-red haze and cold blue twilight. War feels elemental, like fire and frost colliding. Armor looks worn. Faces are streaked with grime and grief. There is no distance between violence and consequence. And psychologically, this is where the film devastates. Macbeth is not simply ambitious, he is fractured. Trauma lingers in his eyes long before he seizes power. Violence hollows him. Each kill erodes something human. This is medieval warfare not as adventure, but as contagion. It spreads from battlefield to throne room, from steel to soul. And that is why it takes the top spot. So here's the question. After feeling the mud, hearing the armor strain, watching men suffocate beneath their own glory, can we ever go back to polished swords and perfect speeches? Which film shocked you the most? Was it the suffocating realism of the king? The psychological collapse in Macbeth? The brutal duel that made you flinch in the Last Duel? Or did Braveheart suddenly feel like fantasy after this? Medieval war was not romance. It was logistics, fear, infection, trauma, and moral compromise. And the filmmakers who understood that didn't just entertain us. They told the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which film felt the most real? Which one disturbed you? And if you're ready to peel back more layers of history, where steel meets flesh and myth meets mud, subscribe. Because the past wasn't clean. It was carved in blood.